I know a certain look, you know. Just no. I know what the person is thinking. Like,
Go back to Africa.
that's black. The black guy just walked in.
In the insult, African Americans Jalisa George and Pape Souley heard a calling. They moved to Senegal's capital Dakar to find an escape from the racial tensions and the divisive politics at home in America.
Today I want to talk about how Kenya can make 3 trillion shillings in 6 months. This is in one very simple step. Pay reparations to the descendants of slavery. Now, before I go any further, I just want to say thank you for all the people who have shown tremendous support to this channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I do appreciate all of you and your feedback. Thank you so much. Now, how can Kenya make 3 trillion shillings in 6 months? Very simple. Pay reparations to the descendants of slavery. What am I talking about? Now, reparations is the idea that if you've caused harm to a group of people, you compensate them for the harm that you caused, right? Now, we do owe reparations to the descendants of slavery. Now you're asking, how come? We didn't enslave anyone. Well, we did. How? Very simple. The current government that exists in Kenya took all the liabilities from the colonial government. And the colonial government took all the liabilities from the governments that existed prior to it. Now, the governments that existed prior to the British invasion were guilty of slave trade. Now, there was slave trade in East Africa, tremendous slave trade, for 700 years, probably more, being conducted by the Arabs. The Arabs have been our enemies for a long time. And so, for hundreds of years, they would sell Africans into slavery. Now, they and their agents would go into the interior of East Africa primarily and capture and kidnap people and sell them into slavery. For example, there are African descendants of slaves all over Asia. From India, there are cities. In Pakistan, there are cities. In Iran, in Iraq, in Jordan, Syria, in Saudi Arabia, all over these places, including Madagascar, Mauritius, Reunion, Seychelles. All these places is where the people of East Africa were sold into slavery. And by East Africa, I mean the area stretching all the way from Ethiopia, going all the way to Mozambique. And this slave trade peaked in the 19th century before it was stopped. Now, let us focus primarily on Kenya. Now, in Kenya, most Kenyans don't believe that we were enslaved. And it's not really covered well in school. Now, the idea that Kenyans were not enslaved is ridiculous, because Kenyans pretend that this is something that happened to West Africans, not understanding that the slave trade that was in East Africa started almost 500 years before the slave trade that started in West Africa. And in East Africa, the total number of people has been estimated who have been kidnapped and sold at about 17 million over all those hundreds of years. Those are very many people. Now, let's go into practical terms. If you remember Mekatilili Wamenja, you should know that her own brother had been sold into slavery. Yeah, go read the history books. You know, so we know that the coastal peoples were really affected by the slave trade, because the Arabs were right there, kidnapping and selling people, and their agents, right? Now, you come back, you go into Kenya a little bit, into the interior, you find the first group that you'll encounter was the Kamba. Now, the Kamba were subject to severe slavery. In fact, today, if you go to Paraguay, you'll find a group of African descendants of slaves who call themselves the Kamba. They call themselves the Kambakua or the Kamba Kokue. And they still remember that they are the Kamba. Now, what is interesting and what is bizarre and unfortunate is that no Kamba leader or government of Kenya leader shows any kind of interest in making contact with them. You know, you'd think that since these are your people, you should like make contact. You know, just say hi. What happened to you guys? You know, have relations with them. But there is no interest, because the modern African man in Kenya shows no solidarity or interest in any other African descendant group anywhere on the globe. Now, you say those are the Kambas. What do we care? Now, the Kikuyus say that they were not enslaved. They were enslaved. Let me give you an example. There's this guy called Mustafa Okpal, and from Turkey, an African descendant in Turkey. And he says that his own grandfather, when he asked where they came from, his grandfather told him that he was a Kikuyu who was kidnapped and sold into Turkey. Now Mustafa tried to make contact with government of Kenya, but there was no interest whatsoever to meet him. None. Can you imagine? So, from these few examples, we know that there was extensive slave trade in Kenya that affected very many people. Now, the people that were selling people were other Africans. You understand? Yeah, and it was business because they were making money from it. You know? Very few Arabs went into the interior. It is Africans who are kidnapping other Africans and selling them for profit at the cost. So because they sold them, then they are liable. And so because now the current government inherited all these situations, if it was to be sued, it would have to be liable. So what I'm saying is that we should take responsibility for all the people who were sold from Kenya and offer reparations to them, and in general, reparations to all the descendants of slavery. Because there were Kenyans who were sold, like we said, into South America, and a few into North America, and very many into India, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and all these islands around Indian Ocean. So we should offer them reparations. And by doing so, we can make a lot of money. Yeah. Let me show you how this works. You know, the poverty in Kenya that you see is strictly a lack of imagination, and it is self-inflicted. Now, let's see how we can leverage our position in Kenya to make this money through offering reparations. Ironical as that sounds. Now, the reparations that I was thinking is free land. Give any descendant of slavery free land in Kenya. Yeah. So this is how this would work in practical terms. Now, we would buy a parcel of land, 50,000 hectares, okay, to offer as reparations. And on that 50,000 hectares rather, we would take about 16,000 and build that into a city, okay, a very, very unique diaspora city, okay. Once we do that, we will make a ton of money. So, this is the context. In Lamu, the government built, or rather is building, a huge port, a very fancy, expensive, huge port, and all sorts of facilities right there. Now, when you go there, and I've been there, literally it's in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing there. You know, there's literally nothing there. They're building huge facilities that will never be used because there's no one there. Now, that project was part of LAPSET. And as we speak right now, LAPSET and the port of Lamu is dead on arrival. It's a white elephant, a waste of time, a tremendous waste of money. Because the original idea was to have Uganda and South Sudan use the port of Lamu exclusively for their oil exports. And so that would have made it viable. Like the oil pipeline was supposed to come to Lamu. Okay, that's why they were building all these jetties, all these, oil storage facilities. But South Sudan pulled out and Uganda pulled out. And the minute these two pulled out, the project basically died. But the government is already on hook for billions and has already signed contracts. So they are continuing to build facilities that will never be used. Because even as we speak, the port of Mombasa is underutilized. So you can imagine such a small economy like Kenya's economy having two major ports. Kenya almost doesn't export anything. Just a few coffee beans and some tea. Right? We don't have any merchant fleet. You know? Like when we import things, the ships that come to Kenya are not Kenyan ships. These are not our ships that we are sending to do trade. It's the foreigners sending their ships to do trade. You know? That is, the general attitude of Kenyans. Everything, every large business is owned by foreigners. So we have these two huge port facilities that are underutilized. So you're like, what a waste of money. Now, to revive this idea and to make the Port of Lamu viable once more, we need a city next to Lamu. So I'm proposing that we buy 50,000 hectares in Mokowe. Mokowe is just north of Lamu. It's beautiful. It's actually quite green. You'd be surprised. It's very wet, very beautiful. It's right next to the ocean. Amazing views. So I'm suggesting we buy the 50,000 hectares there from the locals so that we don't have drama from them at a commercial rate. Okay? So we have the 50,000 hectares. Now, we invite the diaspora people to take up that land for free. But there's a condition. Okay? The land is free, but there's a condition. Now, we are proposing to build a city there called Mokowe City. And I'm calling it Mokowe City for the purposes of this video, not for any other reason, okay? So, we are building a city. We have the land. We approach the diaspora and offer that land free of charge. So, let me tell you what I'm looking at. Now, the focus on the media in Kenya is always on the Mzungu, right? If you switch on TV in Kenya, 99% you're seeing Mzungu, right? Now, if you shift your eyes just a little bit for 5 minutes away from the Mzungu and look at what is going on in the global black community, you will see interesting things. I've been monitoring what's going on there, and there are there's something interesting that is happening right now. There's a phenomena that is happening right now. And what is going on is that many black people in Europe and North America and other places are really getting tired of living under, the racial tensions, and the racial oppression. And they're beginning to see that Africa is a viable place where they can escape to. So many of them are trying to leave and they're trying to come to Africa. But the impediments are so high because you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to do it, you don't know where to start, who to trust, or how to make the move, right? There's none to help them because most African governments either are not aware of what's going on, or if they're aware, they don't care. The only country that has taken advantage of that situation is Ghana. But Ghana hasn't gone the full way. So I'm proposing that we go the full way, okay? So there's a wave of people black people trying to escape the West. If we can ride this wave, we can make a lot of money. A lot of money. So this is how it would work. There's an exodus, right? From the West. It's coming. We can see the trickle, just before the dam breaks. So we need to get ahead of the curve, right? So that we can take advantage of it, right? Now, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying the black diaspora, that is the African descendants of slavery that live in the West, either in Europe or North America, are quite wealthy. They are wealthy because they come from a developed economy. They are wealthy not in those economies. They are wealthy if they were to come with their assets to a country like Kenya. Now, this is how it's working out. I'm seeing, because I was looking into this issue, so I was seeing that a lot of the people who are retiring, the black people who are retiring, they are trying to leave some of those countries. And some of them are going to different places, And some of them are also trickling down to Africa. But the problem that I'm seeing is that infrastructure, hospitals, things of that nature, and lack of assistance, as we've already said. Now, they have pensions, right? Good pensions. By those countries' standards, the pensions are not very high. But by our standards, the pensions are quite high. Because if you're earning $1,500 a month as your pension in those countries, that is starvation, if you can believe that. Now, if you take that $1,500 into the Kenyan economy, you see, that's a lot of money. That's good living, okay? So, you have all this large group of retirees that you can persuade to come to Kenya, okay? Now, you're offering them free land. See, that's the hook right there. You see? That is the hook. The free land is the hook. So you offer them the free land. You tell them, look, you're retiring, right? You do not want to be in this country. You want a a change. By your own admission, you want a change of scenery, you want a fresh new start, you want to escape the racism, the racial hostility, and the tremendous outbreak of crime that is going on in American cities and also European cities. And also you want to escape from the restrictions that were imposed as a result of the health emergency, right? So you're trying to leave, but you don't know how to. So this is what we're proposing. You come to Kenya, take free land in Mokowe City and build your house. But the minimum amount that we want you to invest is $300,000. So in other words, what we're saying, all the people who will be coming to Mokowe City have a minimum investment of $300,000. So I want you to do the numbers. Just do the numbers. If we can attract 50,000 people, retirees, to come to Mokowe City and invest, do the numbers. 50,000 times $300,000. That's 1.5 trillion. Just like that. Now, is there a market for this? There's a huge market for this. Now, the number of Africans descendant in the West, I'm talking about the West very specifically, are about, let's say about 50 million. Thereabouts, right? Now, of that 50 million, 10% would make the move if they were given a viable plan. Now, 10% of 50 million, that's 5 million people. So you see, that's a huge market. That's a vast market. So of that 5 million, we are trying to capture 50,000 that have $300,000 to invest. Now, you may say $300,000 is a lot of money. It may be a lot of money within the Kenyan economy, but really, it's not a lot of money in the West, because in the West, a $300,000 house is a very small house in a very, not a very nice area. The average cost of a house is like 500,000. You know, so most of these retirees, they've already paid off their house. They have a nice little pension that is coming in. So, and it doesn't take much to persuade them to liquidate that house and transfer that investment to Mokowe City. And they win. So part of the sales plan is to tell them, look, if you sell your house, your $300,000 house, you have $300,000 in your house, in your hands. If you build a house in Mokowe City, it will cost you $120,000 only. So you see, you'll end up having even more cash in your hand for a bigger and better and brand new house. You see how that works? So that as a sales point already will capture many people. And we can sell Mokowe City because it's by the ocean, it's beautiful, it's not too hot, it's definitely not too cold. It's the perfect place to retire. You can build a retirement community very easily with an 18-hole golf course, everything. You know, and a nice hospital that specializes in geriatric care. You understand? So that's the idea, to capture the pensioners, the black pensioners in the West who are trying to leave but don't know where to go. And they are loaded with cash and assets. You see, so by their country's standard, they are not rich, but by our country's standard, they would be very rich. So the way to work would be this. We would have a special charter for Mokowe City, okay? A special legal vehicle to contain this area that we are trying to create, okay? Now, the way it would work would be this. The city would be pre-planned. We do not want any of the, the dysfunctions of Kenyan cities. Because when you're walking around Kenyan towns and cities, the first thing you notice is that the streets are too narrow. Everything is squeezed together as if we have a shortage of land. We have a lot of land. So they squeeze everything together. The roads are thin, they're narrow, they're very dirty. The pedestrian walkways are very narrow. And the number of pedestrians are very many, so that people start to walk on the main carriageway competing with cars. And so, in Kenya, the number of pedestrian deaths are extremely high, just because they don't leave enough space for pedestrians to walk by. We don't have, public squares almost anywhere in any town in Kenya. Just travel around Kenya. Go look for the public square in any of these towns. You won't find a single public square. Why? Because the British were very careful when they were designing these towns to avoid putting in public squares. Because it is in the public square that revolutions begin. So to avoid that, they made sure there are no public squares anywhere. So the towns in Kenya are very tacky, they're very ugly, they have no culture, they have nothing. Just narrow, dirty streets squeezed together. So we do not want Mokowe City to be like that. So we will not follow the special plans that are followed for other cities. And when you also look at Kenyan cities, you see they are not built on any kind of grid. You know, the most logical way to place your streets is a simple north-south, east-west grid. Simple. When you look at Nairobi, you'll see that most of the roads in Nairobi go to a dead end. They go nowhere. Just think about it. How many roads in Nairobi go anywhere? They always go to a dead end, to a T-junction. How do you design a city like that? Seriously. And the people in the planning department claim that they have degrees. How is it possible to build a city with roads which go nowhere? Dead end to dead end. So that the traffic is always terrible. People think the traffic is terrible because there are many cars. No. It's because the city is designed so poorly that even if you had 2 cars, you'd still have traffic. You know, it's unbelievable. You know, third world countries are unbelievable. Sometimes even I get shocked, but I digress. Now in Mokowe City, we are not transferring the dysfunctions of third world Kenya into that city. We are building it on the basis of a logical plan, reasoned logic, okay? Box grid, lots of public spaces, lots of greenery, lots of parks and gardens, okay? Lots of public squares, lots of pedestrian spaces. We want to design the city for pedestrians, not for cars. Cars cannot be a focal point. You can't be having a highway cutting through the city. That's very destructive. Right in the middle of the city. So we do not want that. We want to build a nice, pleasant city, you know, taking all the best lessons from other cities, primarily designed for retirees coming in from the West, who are the African diaspora. Okay? That's the idea. Okay? And we are trying to capture them before someone else captures them. And I hate using that word, capture. We are trying to persuade them before someone else persuades them. And if we can get 50,000 of them to move into Mokowe City, we have 1.5 trillion just like that. Just like that. 1.5 trillion. Just think what that means. You have 50,000 brand new residents who have money to spend. So already you know there's a restaurant business, there's a hospital business, nurses will get work. So in this city, because we've pre-planned everything and we've planned the city for about, I think, maybe 250,000 people, maybe 300,000 people. So for a city of that size, you probably need 25 schools, you know, primary, secondary schools. You need like a university. You need like 3 colleges. You need like 4 hospitals, 1 specializing in geriatric care, because our population that is coming in is quite older. And the first thing I think they would ask you is there a good hospital system? So you see, you need a very good hospital that specializes in issues that come with aging. In that same city, given the demography that we are thinking of, probably 3 golf courses, full 18-hole golf courses, okay? A couple of resorts. See, all these things that I'm saying are businesses. These are businesses. And because it's a very well-planned cities, you have retail area, you have banking area, you have residential area, you have proper and rigid zoning. It's not like in other towns in Kenya, you build your small house and then your next door neighbor builds an apartment building, 7 stories high, right next to your house. Total chaos, total lack of planning, absolutely ridiculous. Mokowe, we are not doing that. We are not bringing over the dysfunctions of the rest of Kenya into Mokowe. So Mokowe will require a special charter with a special constitution. Okay? And we'll get back to that. For now, let's talk about money. Let's go back to the issue of money rather than governance. Now, when it comes to that money, now we've attracted 50,000 people. They've bought into the idea of moving into Mokowe. Now, how do they do it in practical terms? In practical terms, I would have the Army Corps of Engineers form a company, form a corporation that they wholly own. Okay? And that corporation is a construction corporation, and its sole function is to build up the infrastructure of Mokowe and to manage Mokowe in terms of the infrastructure. So what they do is that we'd have these people, these diaspora people, pay into the company created by the Army Corps of Engineers and have that company build their houses to their own specifications. We can do all this online. They can design their own house if they want and submit it into the website. Okay? And it gets approved. They are given the cost, all online. They pay the cost and the house is built. Or if they do not have any design, they want our designs, we can have pre-approved designs. Maybe 15 different styles of houses, and they can choose one, and they pay against it, and it's built. So already you can imagine the number of jobs that will be created just by having 50,000 houses being built at the same time. Not everyone will want a house. Some people may want to move into apartment buildings because they want to live in a community. We can do all that. The bottom line is that you're having 50,000 units being built that have already been prepaid. You understand? How many jobs for fundis, electricians, and I don't know who, how many jobs will you create just like that? And of course, in the pricing, we're also taking care of the basic infrastructure of that particular area. Just think the number of jobs that can be created just by doing that. And that is nothing. So let's move on from the retirees. We've gotten the retirees, okay? They are our anchor, as it were. They are our anchor investors. So you have 50,000 retirees. They've moved in. Now, the second layer of investments is the services to these retirees. I already described it. The hospitals, the restaurants, the golf clubs. So you need additional investors to build all these facilities. So you go straight back to the diaspora again and you tell them, look, we have investment opportunities for business. Have you ever dreamt of owning a golf course? Well, there's an opportunity to build one. How much? You tell them the price. Have you ever wanted to own a restaurant? There's an opportunity. We're having 50,000 residents moving into this area over the next 18 months. Tremendous opportunity, right? And for every possible business that you can imagine. And I can assure you that in that diaspora community, there are people who are willing to invest in opening up those businesses. Because many of them, and I've seen this with my own eyes, many of them find it very difficult to run businesses in the West because of the level of discrimination. You may not see it, but when they go to a bank to try and get a loan, they cannot get approval. Or if they get approval, they have to come with like 10 co-signers or 10 guarantors. You know, impossible terms. Okay? So they are not able to start the business. I even saw another news report whereby there was this black American woman. She had started a wig selling business. You know, the fake hair business. And the Chinese suppliers would refuse to supply her the wigs. Can you imagine? But they would supply the other Chinese shop that was down the street. And so in this way, they were sabotaging her business. And she was saying that at this rate, she may have to close the business because she's really struggling to get stock. So such people, that entrepreneurial class that is so frustrated to live there, you can talk to them. You can sell the idea, come open the business in Mokowe City. We already have 50,000 residents guaranteed. There are already market waiting for you. And there's virtually no competition. It's an empty place. No one lives there, right? So you see, so from that initial 50,000 group of retirees, you can get an additional 50,000 people to invest in businesses there. Now, and you can continue that way. So I fully expect, and I believe it's reasonable, to expect to get at least 100 to 200,000 diaspora investors in Mokowe City. If you give the land for free, genuinely, you tell them, look, come open up your factory. You've always wanted to have a factory. Open up your factory here. We are not charging you for the cost of land. And we will service that plot. We'll bring electricity and water. Open up your factories here. And the land, there's no cost. Even when you build a house, there's no cost of the land, just the cost of construction of the house. If you're genuine in doing that, they will come. And 300,000 is the minimum investment. It's not the maximum. Do you understand? And 300,000 is a poor person in the West. That's not a rich person. In Kenya, that's a very rich person if you have $300,000. But in the West, that's not a rich person. That's the lower class. Now, let's talk about the middle class and the upper middle. People who have assets about 700K, about 1 million, 1.5. So you see, you'll attract different classes of people. And some of these people will have 300,000 to invest. Others may have $1 million to invest. You see what I'm saying? And many of them will form investment groups or investment vehicles to invest in some of these things. Like I remember seeing, because I've been monitoring this situation, I remember seeing a group of black doctors in America saying that they were coming together, putting their money together to build a hospital. Except the hospital went to Ghana. Yeah, and they pulled together like $25 million and built a hospital in Ghana. You see, we lost out on that. Are you seeing what I'm saying? That there is money. There is money floating all over. But we are not getting that money. You see? So what I'm saying is, the money is there. It's our job to build a net to capture the money. You see, the wind is always blowing. And you could be in the ocean stranded. But if you had a bed sheet to turn into a sail, you could capture that wind and go where you're going. So what I'm saying is, there's money flowing all over the place. All we are lacking is a sail to capture that money, or a net to capture that money. So I'm showing you how to build a net or a sail to capture that money. So you can imagine such a group of doctors, you can talk to them and tell them, look, we need a hospital in Mokowe. We have 50,000 residents. That's a ready market there for you. And they'll be willing to take that 25 million and invest it there. That's a lot of money. Those are many jobs. Do you see what I'm saying? So Mokowe City would be a diaspora city. And in the chart of the city, let's talk about the governance of the city. Because the governance is what will make it or break it. Now, it cannot be run like other cities in Kenya. Okay, so one of the things that we would have to guarantee is that 1/3 of the council positions, must go to the diaspora people. Number 2, you can citizenship. If someone invests the money in that city, you give them their citizenship for Kenya immediately. You don't bring about all these hurdles and complications. I don't know, you have to live in Kenya for 11 years. For what? Someone invests, give them their citizenship immediately. Even on probation, give it to them. And allow them to vote in Mokowe elections. Strictly, you may decide whether you want to allow them to vote in the rest of Kenya elections, but in the case of Mokowe elections, you have to allow them to vote, you must allow them to run. And 1/3 of the positions must be reserved for the diaspora people. The other thing that is extremely important is this: Mokowe City must be an African city only. In other words, what we are saying in the city charter, you cannot allow Indians, you cannot allow Chinese, you cannot allow Mzungu, you cannot allow Arabs to go in there to invest at all. You can't. It's not going to work. Why? Because a lot of these diaspora people, they are escaping the racism. They're tired. It has broken them. If you've never lived in the West, then you really don't know how bad it is. And it's really, really bad. If you've never lived with Arabs, you have no idea how they treat Africans. If you've never lived with Mzungu, you have no idea how they treat Africans. If you've never lived with Chinese, you have no idea. I mean, these groups really hate us. No, it's not up to you to understand the roots of that hatred. That's their business. All I'm saying is that they actually hate us so extremely much. You understand? And so the black people that are unfortunate enough to be born in those societies where they are a tiny minority that is hated and despised and maligned, some of them just want to escape. They want to get out because they're traumatized. You understand? They are really traumatized. And so when they come to Mokowe City, they're coming as a place of refuge. They have no interest in encountering a Mzungu there. They have no interest in encountering a Chinese there. They have no interest in encountering an Arab there. Do you understand? No interest. And so part of the city charter must explicitly say, no Mzungu, no Chinese, no Indian, no such thing. Strictly African diaspora and native Africans only. And so, in terms of economic opportunity, 2/3 of the investment opportunities must be given to the diaspora. 1/3 should be given to locals. You see how that works? So that in this planned city, we know, once you've planned out a city and you've zoned out everything, you really know how many business opportunities there are, because this is an orderly city. This is not a chaotic third world city. So we know from the plan, just by looking at it, we know that we have, let's say, 100 petrol stations, for example. Because as part of the plan, you've already placed the petrol stations within the design, right? You know the number of hospitals you have, you know the number of schools, you know the number of retail centers that you have within the plan. It's already planned out. So you know how many supermarkets you'll end up having. You know the number of retail areas you'll end up having. You can even estimate the number of restaurants that you'll have. All we are saying is that 1/3 of those opportunities be reserved for Kenyans, African Kenyans, and 2/3 be given to the diaspora. So because that is the selling point, that you can come to Mokoe City and build your supermarket. You've always wanted to own a supermarket, right? Well, this is your chance, right? Put some money together, build a supermarket. Do you see where I'm going with this? So, and if you are to do that, if you are to give them absolute guarantees that in that city they will not encounter any of these peoples that hate us so much, I'm telling you, they will come. They will come. We will end up having a city of about 200,000 people. The minimum entry is 300K. That's a lot of money. So you do the numbers. 200,000 people who've invested a minimum of $300,000. How much money do you think that is? See, that's like 7 trillion. We can literally pull this off within 5 or 6 years. Because it's really not our money. We are not putting up any money. We are simply facilitating and providing the service that is so desperately needed. So you see, there's a wave of people from the West trying to move into Africa. Now, if we ride this wave, we'll make tons of money. You see what I'm saying? Now, you may argue and say, has this been tried somewhere else before? Yes. Yes. Where? Dubai. What do you think is the design of Dubai? What do you think is the model they created, or rather they followed? The model was very simple. They leveraged what they had, and they opened up the issue of travel. They don't bother you with a lot of complications when you want to travel there. And then they built up houses and sold it to foreigners. I mean, when you go to Dubai, the Arabs are like 5% of the population. So who lives in all those houses? It's not the Arabs. It's the foreigners who've bought houses there. And they're buying houses without being given citizenship. But they still bought the house. Now think about Dubai. Think about all the disadvantages that Dubai has as a location. It's in a terrible neighborhood, very dangerous in terms of war and instability, right? It's extremely hot, very unpleasant climate, horrible climate, has no rivers, doesn't rain, no natural trees or mountains or forests or parks or waterfalls or wild animals. It is simply a sandbox. And they took that sandbox and they leveraged the sandbox and turned it into a $300 billion economy. A sandbox in a horrible place in the world that has almost no natural advantage. Now think of how beautiful Kenya is. Think how pleasant it is. So you mean to tell me we cannot follow the same model and create a very, very prosperous city in Lamu, and thereby making the port of Lamu viable once again? What is stopping us? The only thing that is stopping us is the children of the home guards who rule over Kenya. It's the elite. The elite is always the problem. So let me give you an example. Let's say I write up a fancy proposal, make it all fancy and cute, and go to the Ministry of Planning and Treasury and try to talk to them and explain the Mokowe City Plan or the Diaspora Reparations Plan, whichever way you want to call it. let's even assume that the PS is willing to sit with me for half an hour and listen. And he listens. And he takes up that proposal. And he circulates it upstairs. You know, chain of command. It will go up, until it will get to a point where it can be approved or disapproved. What do you think is going to happen? The first thing, they're going to call London. For what? To get permission. What you need to understand is that the elite of Kenya never makes any decision without first consulting Mzungu. They must be given permission from London and Washington before they do anything. Whether you believe it or not. And of course, they'll ask Mzungu for permission. Mzungu will say no. End of story. It doesn't matter whether it's beneficial to us or it's not beneficial to us. It doesn't matter. You're saying I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Why do you think there are Kenyan troops in Somalia? Who do you think gave the instructions for those troops to go into Somalia? It's not the Kenya government. They were given instructions from London and Washington. Send your boys in Somalia because we are too scared to go in there. So that's why our men are dying in Somalia. They don't even know why they are dying or what they are fighting for. Well, they are fighting for Mzungu. Why can't they be withdrawn? Well, the Mzungu hasn't given those instructions yet. So you have to continue dying. You see what I'm saying? It's not a joke. And so the elite is our liability in Kenya. Okay? They inflict us with poverty. Extreme, excruciating, horrific poverty. And there's so much money flying around. We can make trillions of shillings within 5 years. As I have just explained. So we know that the diaspora exodus will happen. It will happen. Millions will come back to Africa. It's going to happen. All I'm saying is this. Let us make money off of it. Surely. We can surely use, a couple of trillion.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and comment below. Kenya's time has come. Our time has come. Your time has come. Our time to succeed and not fail. Our time to grow wealth and not poverty. Our time to go up and not down. It's time for you to stop walking and drive your car. Stop renting and buy yourself a house. It's your time to get blessed. Join the CCV movement and together let us kick poverty and unemployment out of Kenya. Become a member today. Donate what you can. And remember that the CCV is the only political organization in Kenya that is squarely built upon Christian values, unlike the rest. We'll see you next time. Thank you.